I welcome you all here, those of you sharing this virtual table, the fourth session really in the virtual offer of Hubby Cymru as part of its conference week. As we all know, we are all leading and living different lives at the moment, and it is a virtual offer this year. And if you joined earlier this evening, you would have listened into the session, and this follows on nicely really. The session earlier led my dear friend Hugh was in relation to what we eat as far as meat is what we are, and clearly it follows on. And Gwyn, welcome. Can you hear us?
Yes, sorry.
Brilliant. The family is well gathered, right? And this follows on really. This session deals with the whole issue of the credibility, the well-being and health status of our national flock and a national herd, really, as we tune into a healthy and sustainable future. Flock and herd health as a cornerstone of the industry, and certainly a cornerstone of consumer confidence, because without that consumer confidence, without that consumer consent, we can't operate. So I'm fortunate to have around the table this evening, I have the Chief Veterinary Officer for Wales, Professor Christianne Glossop. Professor Christianne, welcome. You hardly need to be introduced. You've been in position as the very first Chief Vet Officer for Wales since 2005, since the function of animal health was devolved to Wales. And on the back of that, 15 years on, you were richly recognised recently by Her Majesty the Queen's birthday honours. Congratulations to you on that award. We also have with us a practicing vet in Tom Searle from Cardiff, a practicing vet down in Cardiff there, and qualified some 4 years ago from the Royal Veterinary College in London. And we'll hear more from Tom later on, especially in relation to his role as a Stoc Plus vet ambassador. And we will be discussing that whole initiative as part of the Red Meat development program as well. And that brings me on nicely to Rebecca, Dr. Rebecca Stewart, one of our own in Hubby, who leads from the front that initiative. And we'll hear more very shortly from Rebecca on the whole dynamics surrounding this initiative, which I'm sure you'll have more to tell us. But it wouldn't be complete around this virtual table without having a real farmer. And Gwyn Johnson, very much so, ticks that box. Gwyn is a practicing farmer in Pontypridd area, is a sheep farmer, and also is part of the Stoc Plus project, as in, if I remember rightly, in your first year of that program. And Gwyn, along with Tom, will be able to tell us the benefits, the challenges, and certainly what it's meant to your business, Gwyn. And I'm sure Tom will also be able to tell us from a perspective of a veterinary surgeon as well. So, conscious of time, let's make a start, therefore. So I turn to Dr. Rebecca Stewart. Welcome, Rebecca. The floor is yours to take us through a quick canter of the whole initiative of Stoc Plus and where exactly we are at this present time. Over to you, Rebecca.
Thanks, John, for that very kind introduction. So just to start everyone off and set the scene, really. So to begin with, I'll quickly outline what the Stoc Plus project is all about for those of you who may not be aware. So the Stoc Plus project is part of the Red Meat Development Programme, which is a 5-year initiative within Wales to try and then support those beef and sheep farmers. So ultimately what we're aiming to do as part of the Red Meat Development Programme is equip the red meat sector for a more sustainable future moving forward. So this is ultimately done through 3 different projects, one of those being the Stoc Plus project. The 2 other projects within the programme are the Hill Ram scheme and the Lamb Meat Eating Quality project as well. Larry Price gave a project update earlier on this afternoon. But if you did miss that or are looking for information on either of those programmes, then please check out our website for project updates and then just some more general project information essentially. So in terms of the Stoc Plus project, This is a project whereby we're working with beef and sheep farmers across Wales, but trying to encourage and get them engaged and a bit more proactive with animal health planning. So as everyone is very familiar, animal health planning is often associated with a stigma associated with animal health planning, in terms of a lot of people just see it as that tick box exercise. So ultimately, as part of the Stoc project, we're trying to encourage a more proactive approach. So trying to essentially build on those relationships between the farmer and the vet. So there's lots more conversation happening on a more regular basis, that they're not leaving it to once in a year to have a review of the health plan to try and identify where the problems are happening on farms. So that's kind of the overall aim of the programme. So in terms of project numbers and where we're at with the programme to date, we have over 280 farms currently engaged with the project, and 37 different vet practices across Wales that are the vets that are carrying out this work. So in terms of how the project all works, ultimately farmers sign up essentially, they get the option of working with the vet that they normally work with out on farm. So there's already that good relationship between farmer and vet essentially. So we're ultimately trying to build on that. And slightly different to your normal animal health plan visit, what we actually do is try and identify a number of different animal health priorities at farm level during that initial vet visit. So these could be anything from production to recording, and ultimately leading on from that, what we try and do is come up with bespoke and tailored action plans for each individual priority. So the farmer and the vet have a set guide to start working towards and trying to making those improvements on farm. So that's ultimately, in a nutshell, how the project is slightly different to the norm. In terms of vet visits and things, you might ask, oh, how does it all work moving forward? So each farm each farm is entitled to 5 vet visits over the course of 3 years. So each farm signed up for a 3-year period. So in terms of then those animal health those action plans, what we try and do is give them, as I said, bespoke to each individual priority in each individual farm. So for example, lameness comes up time and time again as one of the big health concerns within the sheep industry. So often what we try and do is signpost individual farmers to the 5-point plan for lameness, essentially try and identify what they're already doing on farm or at farm level in terms of lameness, and trying to identify is there anything else they could be doing to try and improve on their lameness issue within the flock. So for example, some of the decisions could be around culling, for example. So are they culling at the repeat offenders? So we try and encourage and get the farms to get more engaged with record keeping. So when they are treating, that they actually are recording who they've treated. So ultimately they can pick out those repeat offenders at culling time. So the project in a whole has been quite interesting to date. We've identified that it seems that it's the same animal health priorities coming up time and time again. So you might ask, oh, what are we seeing as the big health concerns within Wales for beef and sheep at the moment? Within sheep or in the flocks, what we identify is 3 common health issues. They are lameness, fertility, and worm control. So there's lots that your farmer and the vet can be doing to try and overcome problems on farm. So perhaps Tom will touch on this later on. And then within the beef sector, what we've identified as the top 2 really are fertility and infectious disease. So again, these are some of the issues we're trying to work on and work towards improving. One other point I would just like to make before I pass on to Christianne is that there is now a budget of there is a Stoc Plus diagnostic budget now available for each project participating in the programme. So I would encourage, if there's anyone tuned in tonight who is part of the Stoc Plus project and who hasn't used that money that's currently available, please get in touch with your vet to have that conversation about what you could be doing, or what diagnostics tests would be suited for your particular farm. So without further ado, I'll pass you over to Christianne.
Thanks, Rebecca. Before Christianne comes in, and thank you for that quick canter. Can I just ask you, I know questions and answers will follow, but I think a lot of people would be asking at this very moment in time, as you've sowed the seed of interest amongst those that may not be part of the 280 farms. It's a 3-year maximum engagement in the programme, and it's only till 2023. So would you be still in a position to enrol new farms on?
Yes, so we are currently just ironing out the last few pieces, but the plan will be to recruit farms of early January 2021. So the project will come to an end in June 2023. So then it's just ensuring that those farms that we do engage with during that period of time do get the benefits of the programme that we've seen for the farms that would have recruited in EOI 1 essentially. So yeah, so if anyone is interested, please get in touch or keep an eye on our website for further information. But ultimately what we're probably going to do with that particular EOI is, or recruitment, sorry, will be a kind of a targeted approach. So looking at what kind of farm systems we currently have on the project and looking at what vets we're currently working with, and then just filling the gaps if we're not working with certain vets or certain areas, trying to get more recruitment from those particular areas. So.
Great, thank you, Rebecca. And it nicely brings me on to Christianne, really. This really does fit well, Christianne, doesn't it, as part of government's strategy and initiative to improve the status of the national herd and flock. And this is a very good example, therefore, of industry working close with government-funded initiatives in that respect.
It certainly is, John, and Noswaith, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for enabling me to be part of this really important session on health planning. And I think I'd just like to remind us all at the start that health planning is not a new concept. It might be being relaunched, if you like, through this Stoc Plus programme, but health planning has been part of the vocabulary, at least, for more than 20 years. And, you know, I'd like to think that when I used to be what you might have regarded as a proper vet before I came into government service, I was out there health planning with pig farmers in particular, as part of their farm assurance schemes. And, you know, we recognised at that time that you could either do health planning as that tick box exercise Rebecca has referred to, or you can do a proper job. You can have a proper living, breathing activity. So rather than a health plan being a noun, a thing, it's an activity, health planning. And what we need is that living, breathing planning process where the farmer and the private vet, in effect, have a kind of co-production where they look at the farm production records, medicine usage, production costs, the quality of the product, grading, whatever it is that's important to you and the contracts that you are fulfilling, and identifying areas of concern which you could then target. And it was interesting, I was just capturing the priorities that Rebecca mentioned just then, for example, of sheep, lameness, fertility and worms. Well, there's a great surprise there, is there? And yet it's kind of reassuring to know that that's what's happening and that's what's demonstrated by examination of those records. And so very importantly, having identified priorities, to think about in a very systematic way, what do you want to tackle first? What is the plan for tackling that? Applying those basic principles of infectious disease control, keeping infection out if you don't have it, finding it quickly and diagnosing it properly, then stopping it getting any worse and stamping out that infection in whatever way is most appropriate with guidance from your vet. And you know, why is that important? Well, quite apart from improving your bottom line, which obviously is ever so important, and the quality of the product, right now, of all times, let's think about all those trade negotiations as we drop out of the EU and we're trying to negotiate deals with Europe and with other countries, and providing an assurance to our trading partners that we mean business when it comes to animal health and animal welfare is just ever so important. You imagine what a trading advantage it would be if we could show that brand Wales, every single livestock holding in Wales, is health planning in that active way with the farmer and the vet working together. You know, what a selling point that would be. And how well does that fit with the government's animal health and welfare framework? I should say the animal health and welfare framework it belongs to all of us. It's not just government. That's another co-production. And it was when that framework identified that we want animals in Wales to be healthy, have a good quality of life. We want consumers to have confidence in the products and to know how they're produced and to know that public health is being protected. And let's not forget that in this year of all years, when One Health is taking centre stage, also that we have a good quality environment and that the rural economy is thriving. And all of those things are supported by active health planning, which is why the Animal Health and Welfare Framework for Wales identifies health planning as an absolutely top priority. But as I say, the funding, I'm so pleased to see funding going into this activity. You know, there have been years where there hasn't been that much investment in animal health and welfare from a central point. And this, I think, is a really good example of where we can make a difference. Prevention is better than cure. But when we have a problem, let's identify it and let's step out and do something about it. And, you know, as I said, this is the co-production between the farmer and their vet. That is the unit of health planning. And that's why I'm really pleased to see that on the panel today, we've actually got a proper vet coming from a proper veterinary college. So I'm not biased in any way, but a proper veterinary college and a proper farmer. All respect to you, John, as well, of course. So I'm really excited to hear what else we've got to learn tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Christiane. And a little bird tells me that Tom and yourself have more in common than your qualification of veterinary profession, that you're both avid rowers, yourself having been back in the 70s on the Thames, and Tom more recently part of the rowing club down there in Llandaff. So there's even more in common than just the industry and the well-being of our national flock and herd. Which brings me on nicely then to the two characters in the co-production, Christiane, that you referred to Tom and to Gwyn. Tom as the practicing vet and Gwyn as the recipient farmer in the Stoc Plus scheme. I'll turn to Tom first. I'm sure there's a lot you want to share with us and tell us, and there's a lot of questions coming in, and I'll come to those later. But I suppose the key question I would ask, has it improved the dialogue and the discussion as far as the well-being of flocks and herds between the vet and the farmer? I'll start from there. Tom.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me. John, it definitely has. Notoriously, within any vet practice, you have the small percentage of people who you would talk to quite regularly anyway. But this scheme has enabled us to be out on farm and to be talking on farm with some of those clients that potentially routinely we wouldn't normally see. Namely, in our practice, it's the sheep clients. Purely down to originally would be seen as an emergency service, coming out to those lambings and emergency sick animals, which classically a good sheep farmer wouldn't have particularly many of them. And this has enabled us to get that foot in through the front door and to be able to sit down and really understand what is going on our clients' farms and how can we best help them with their problems and push that farm to the best of its ability. It's not a common thing that we do have that allocated few hours to go and sit down and really put down what is going on this farm and put it in black and white. Being able to look at farm figures in a dedicated window where you're not sort of just adding it on at the end of a normal routine call, and being able to have sort of that allocated slot and time to be able to sit and discuss everything through really builds that rapport between the vet and the client, and then it sort of ultimately builds that relationship, as Christiane's alluding to, that I want to move away from health planning being a very static thing and that sitting down and writing it and then it's written and it's put on the shelf and we might look at it next year. For me, health planning is a continual fluid thing, and it's being able to have that rapport and that teamwork between the vet and the client to be able to react to whatever is changing and influence that onto the health plan, and then ultimately prevent that issue occurring in the future. So I really want to get across that health planning is fluid, it's organic, and it's not a static piece of paper tick box that gets filled out for someone else's benefit, such as a farm assurance scheme. No, it should be for the farmer's benefit and the stock that's on that farm.
Okay, Tom and Gwyn, welcome, Gwyn. I'm glad you're back with us because I know you're having connectivity issues. Would you subscribe to Tom's interpretation of the scheme and the benefits? You know, are you reevaluating how you approach your flock health?
Yeah, good evening. Thank you for inviting me. Tom is a very enthusiastic vet, and his enthusiasm is quite infectious. So to have Tom as our vet, we're very lucky. Tom's expertise and ability does really make us reevaluate what we're doing on the farm. We've been working with Tom for a number of years, and he kind of knows our farm inside out and knows a lot of our issues that we're trying to deal with. So for us to be then part of this Stoc Plus scheme really gives us the ability to work with Tom further, look into these issues further, and hopefully reevaluate where we're heading with improving on those issues.
Would you subscribe then, Gwyn, to what Rebecca shared with us earlier, that, you know, when you look at the challenges, the three challenges, and Tom, I suppose this is also to you, that sheep, it's lameness, fertility, and worm control, and as far as beef is concerned and cattle, fertility, infectious disease such as BVD and what have you, are those the common threads and themes that you find?
I would say so on a number of farms, but the issues that we've identified on our farms are slightly more out of the ordinary. So we are looking specifically at liver fluke monitoring, lamb growth rates, and lamb mortality at lambing. And we think that these are our main issues on the farm. So we've been working with Tom now for the last 18 months, and we have found minor things that we can sort of improve on that will give us that little edge and improvement on the farm. So things like lamb growth, we identified through blood testing through the scheme that we had a cobalt deficiency, and then since then we've realized that by supplementing very simply with cobalt, our daily live weight gain has really improved on the farm.
So, and I can see the questions are starting to flow in, and I'll come to them, but there's a very relevant question that follows on from your comments, Gwyn, in relation to, it's not just about the herd state, the health status of your herds and flocks. It's also about the financial well-being of your businesses, because this marries well together. And if you look at Mike, good evening, yes. Mike. You've asked a question there. Health plan is not just, it's not new. You know, why are we relaunching it? Why has it taken, and Christianne, you may have a view on this, why has it taken so long for the penny to drop? It's not just about earning consumer confidence in this different world of trading, and also about improving the health and well-being of our national herd and flock, but it's also about improving the financial chances of those businesses. So why is it taken so long? Yes, Christianne.
Try and address that. And obviously, I don't have the answer. I mean, as you say, I've been in this job a while now, and we were talking health planning when I arrived, and I came from a background of health planning. And, you know, I think it's true to say that a certain proportion of farmers cottoned onto this a long time ago. And coming from a background in the pig industry, where the bottom line over the years has been, you know, sort of very, very, very tight, because feed costs are such a massive proportion of production costs. And pig farmers, even 20 years ago or so, were very aware of their farrowing rates, pre-weaning mortality, growth rates. They could tell you those numbers on a weekly basis. And within that context, they were then very interested to figure out what is it that is holding me back. what's the one thing I can do that's going to make that difference to my productivity, which will then help that bottom line. So I think some farmers, even, and perhaps I'm coming from that background, but when I came to Wales, some of the first farmers I met were totally focused on health planning. So some people potted on a long time ago. You do need leaders in all development, but I think to demonstrate a proper cost benefit is what's required. And I'm hoping that this programme that we're talking about today can actually do that, so that people that aren't completely convinced can look at case studies from real farms in real Wales, and actually are far more likely to listen to Gwyn and Tom than they are going to listen to me. So it's much better to have those case studies and to help people understand what a difference it can make.
And on that point there, can I turn to Gwyn? I'll come to you, Rebecca, because there's a few questions coming your way. Gwyn, would you subscribe therefore to Christianne's words that, you know, collecting all this data can make a real financial difference to your business?
Oh, massively. When we looked at our lamb mortality from scanning to lambing, we identified a couple of issues that we thought possibly shouldn't be happening. So all these figures were recorded, and we've got figures then we can look at the following lambing and things we can put in place now to improve our figures and, in theory, improve our bottom line, because we'll have more lambs to sell.
Great. And on that point then, Rebecca, I turn to Wyn Evans's question. Croeso, Wyn, diolch am y cwestiwn. I can see a lot of useful data being gathered here. Will this be used for future reference? Will this be part of the hook to get more people involved in this kind of practice way after the scheme Stoc Plus has come to an end? Rebecca?
Yeah, just to continue on from Christianne's point about the cost of production and things, this is something that we're actually looking at as part of the programme as well. So there is a cost benefit element to the Stoc Plus project, which I think will be like renowned for the amount of information it should generate. And then it comes back to Wyn's point about, will this information be used for further information moving forward? Yes, I'd like to think it would be. We do make a regular, or try and be as proactive in terms of putting or press releases and information out there and case studies as much as possible currently through the programme, and they're all quite positive stories. So I know Gwyn has been used with one of our press releases just looking at daily live weight gain and on-farm activity. Another one has touched on fertility in cattle, looking at trying to reduce that calving index and things. So all of these are quite positive stories and positive information for the industry. So I'd like to think that in a way we're already putting that information out there. So perhaps what we can do is try and increase the amount of information that we're putting out there. But ultimately, yeah, I think it'll all be very useful moving forward. And perhaps as well with the animal health issues that we're identifying on farm, obviously Christianne has mentioned that with the sheep side of things, lameness and worm control obviously comes up time and time again as the main concerns, and this is something that they're very much aware of. Perhaps as well it might be able to identify future projects and future funding schemes where perhaps we should be putting the money moving forward.
And Aled Jones, diolch Aled am dy sylwadau. Thank you, Aled, for your comments. But it's very valid, isn't it? You know, we're all guilty of gathering the information and putting it back in the A4 file. But isn't here now an opportunity post Stoc Plus to take it to the next level, that data capture can really make a difference to your businesses, that it can be a living, breathing practice? Because I suppose it's fair to say, and we are all guilty of it as real farmers, but we just pack it up to the next farm assurance visit. You know, I think there's a piece of work to make sure that people can see the real benefit. Are you seeing a shift in the mindset? And I suppose that's a question for Tom on the ground, really, as you visit various cross-section of farms within the scheme. Tom?
Well, as Gwyn was saying, is that Gwyn has got a good amount of data already, and that really facilitates, you know, even the most basic information such as scanning rates, pregnancy rates, simple things like that, really facilitates the ability to sit down and indicate them where collecting, and where could we focus more information collecting. John, I would love more farmers to collect more data of some form, some records, and time again, that a lot of my stock buses have been, we sit down and go, okay, where do we think everything is going, and do we have anything in black and white to prove that? Oh no, wait, we don't have any records, or we have very scant records. Our first plan of this year is to actually collect some information then to really boil down onto those issues. And hopefully, if more people can collect that data, that it will make this a lot easier to record and then ultimately see your improvements. Because if you don't know where you are, how can you know if that little change made it better or made it worse? So we need to really get that baseline of information.
I'm conscious of time. I want to cover another 2 questions that have appeared, one from Glassnut and one other. But can I just come back, Tom? And this also turns towards Christianne as well. We've got 37 practicing vet practices engaged in Stoc Plus. Do you feel there's a bit more work to be done with veterinary practices as we focus on the farms? Because they are the professionals as they enter through the farm gates. They are the influencers, the frontline influencers. Are you confident, both vets, therefore, that your profession is doing as much as it can to influence this change that needs to happen over the next few years? Christianne?
I think that it's a bit of a circle, really, because you can be knocking on the door of a farmer and trying to persuade them to embrace the concept of health planning, and if they're not getting it and they can't see the benefit, then that's a very difficult thing. But we've also probably got farmers in Wales whose vets haven't necessarily embraced health planning or are not getting the answer. Now, I'm really pleased we've got a recently qualified vet here on the panel, because I think that's exactly, we're looking at the future. We're looking at Tom now, no pressure, Tom, but it's people like you who've come through college very much embracing our college motto, which I won't embarrass you by asking you what it is, but I might embarrass you by asking you what it is. Do you remember? No, he doesn't. It's in Latin, it's prevention is better than cure. Ente curate morbo. And we need the new generations of veterinary surgeons to be totally au fait with this process, recognising and being able to demonstrate the benefits. Now, that doesn't mean I'm writing off every vet that's my age or similar decade at all. And I've already said that I've been involved in health planning for a long time. But certainly the profession needs to show leadership. And if you look at the leaders within our veterinary profession right now, people like James Russell, President of the British Veterinary Association, he has got health planning at his heart. And I think it's leadership from people like him, and then people out there in practice understanding these benefits and seeing them working that's going to make the difference.
Tom, I take it, I'm conscious we've only got a few minutes left, but you would subscribe to those words completely, I'm sure.
So I would agree with Christianne. I think coming out of my university course, there was a lot more on the health planning concept. I think the first practice I went into was a mixed practice, where classically a mixed farm animal vet is there for the calvings, the cesareans, the emergencies, the fire brigade work. Whereas as we've come into moving away from maybe that mixed practice concept, becoming more dedicated and specialized, that yes, this is where that health planning tool comes in. I think as an industry, what we ultimately do struggle with is billing that time. And farmer, it is very easy to go out and say, right, I've done a calving, here's a calf, fantastic, there's the price, they can see that in front of them. But sitting down and discussing and giving information and working through, it's quite hard in our respect to bill, and we don't understand our own worth. That it's quite difficult in that point. So I think that's something as a profession we need to look at and to become clear across the board we should value our time and value that sitting down and going through paperwork instead of being hands-on with the stock as well.
I've got a question here to Rebecca from David Jarrett, and I apologize to David, it's been sitting there for some time. He says it's good to hear that you have a diagnostic budget in the scheme, which will help both the farmer and his vet. Think there is a financial limit per farm, and therefore is there an option in exceptional circumstances for this budget to be increased? Rebecca?
Yes, there is a financial limit at the moment, and that's quite a generous budget, I feel. There's ability to do quite a bit with that budget. So unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to have exceptional circumstances to increase the budget, I'm afraid. But I do know there are other schemes and other projects out there that do offer a diagnostics budget. So all that we could potentially do is pool different pots of money together if the budget was over what we were allocating as a Stoc Plus project. And I do believe some of the Stoc Plus farmers are using multiple budgets or multiple pots of money to currently carry out diagnostics on farm to make more informed decisions and choices, basically. So yeah, so I think that's how I leave that question, I'm afraid.
I would agree with that. There's a good pot of money there, isn't there? If your vet can spend all of that and not get you a justified answer, well, yeah, okay, there's plenty of money available from sort of HCC Farming Connect.
Can I thread in then, Rebecca, to your answer? We're discussing here this evening the health status of our flocks and herds, but we mustn't forget the whole aspect of sustainability. And Gareth Wilson is asking the question: given the link between animal health and the carbon footprint of the farm, could we also use this data, this whole issue of capturing so much useful information to promote the green credentials of Welsh farming, especially coming back, and it ties into what Ali Jones is saying, Christianne, what you said earlier, in these world of new trade talks, that it is another great selling point for our brilliant Welsh produce. So Rebecca, are we going to be doing more as far as green credentials?
Yes, I believe this is something we will be doing, and HEC is obviously very aware and very involved in carbon footprint and everything that goes with it. So I think for that particular aspect of things, perhaps some simple KPIs could be used on farm to start trying to identify how sustainable we are moving forward. So yeah, I think that will be something that will come as part of the programme.
Great. I'm sorry. I apologize to those around the virtual table. I'm going to have to bring this to an end. I just had a message telling me my time is up. It's not the first time I get reminded of that I go over time. And I'm very sorry to a number of you that I've failed to get to capture all your questions and comments. It's just our greatest enemy has been time this evening. Can I thank the panelists for your contributions and for the dialogue that's ensued since your contributions here this evening. And I'm sure that discussion will continue long after this evening. Can I also thank those of you that have been sitting to my right this evening as part of the chat columns. It is a challenging and evolving part of our agenda as farmers, as meat producers. There is always more to do. Nid da lle gellir gwell, and that challenge continues. Tune in tomorrow for the main part of Hubby Cymru's offer during conference week. We start at 3 with the ministerial address and also that of the chairman of Hubby as well, and there'll be other speakers throughout the afternoon. I hope that you found this evening to have brought some of the key message back to us as the value and worth of herd and flock health planning. And I thank those in the back room as well for supporting us throughout this technological journey this evening. With those few words, at 40 minutes past 7, I bring this discussion and dialogue to close. Diolch yn fawr iawn i chi gyd. Pob bendydd. Hwyl fawr.